Hello there, everybody. I am Scott Sigler, author of Alive. Welcome to the Alive Q&A episode. This one turned out kind of weird. What we did is my business partner, A. Kovacs, and I, a real girl herself, we did a Google Hangout. So it was live, people able to jump in and ask questions on the fly, us both live on camera. And turns out, here's an interesting thing. Although both of us have been on dozens and dozens of Hangouts over the years, she's never set one up, and I thought she had. And I've never set one up, and I thought she had. So right when the time came for the Hangout, we were both scrambling, had no idea what was going on. There was 10 minutes of total idiocy where it was just kind of dead air. We were trying to figure out, turn on microphones and cameras and all that business. So for this video, we have cut out that early 10 minutes. We dive right in on the questions. When it starts out, I am solo, and then shortly after that, a real girl sits there to join me. Just the two of us on camera. We're answering questions that were coming in pretty fast and furious. Some were sent in ahead of time. A lot of them were emailed in. You'll hear the email ding as we're doing the episode with all the questions coming in. It's a very long video. This is well over an hour, and hopefully we answered all of your questions. We hope you enjoy this. This is a live episode number 21, the question and answer episode. Next episode 22, we're going to give you a sneak peek of A Light, which is book 2 in the Generations Trilogy and will be for sale April 5th, 2016. So you'll get to hear what happens in the first couple chapters of that book to follow up the end of Alive. I hope you enjoy the video. Bear with our technical difficulties. We did the best we could. Our next hangout will be much better. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the episode. So this was really, it was simultaneously easy and also difficult, if that makes any sense. So writing first person was really difficult, but I wanted the immediacy of you being there with her, in that sense that anything could happen in real time to Em and her friends, and not have to go with, not have to go third person. Third person, sometimes, although we're totally used to it in Western culture, it creates a subtle perception that the main character is telling you the story after the fact, and therefore the main character probably lives and everything turns out okay. So I went first person for the immediacy level. It was really difficult to get rid of he said, she said, and all the past tense verbs and move into I say. So that first person present was quite a challenge. As far as getting into the mindset of a juvenile female, that part I don't think was all that difficult, because one of the points of Alive is this is a post-gender, post-racial book. So what we're looking at is a culture or a situation in which gender is irrelevant and race is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is class, and they're not even aware of what the classes are. So it was pretty easy. And then I've got, hello, this is A, everybody.
We're going to do it this way. We're going to do it live.
We're going to do it live. I have two nieces. One is going to be a freshman. One is going to be a 7th grader. And I also have two nephews that are older. By and large, these kids seem to be, they obviously have subtle boy-girl differences, but they're largely driven by a lot of the same things. And I tried to imagine the four of them at equal ages, at age 12, all thrown into this situation and see where things would go from there. So the gender really wasn't that big of an issue, because the only thing that matters gender-wise in Alive is the size and aggressiveness of the characters. And it comes down to Em being small. Even for a female in the book, she's relatively small. So she is really required to use her head and her instincts, her leadership ability, and frankly, her brutality, the parts of her that she wasn't aware exist when the story starts out. So it was pretty easy to do, but first person was really difficult. And I think once I get out of this trilogy and possibly the prequel, if I get to write the prequel, I don't think I'll write first person again after I'm done with the Generations Trilogy, but who knows? Could be a long time. Hey, what's the next question?
Holy cow, people. The next one is more of a general question. During your podcast, you do a lot of talky talk at the beginning.
Yep.
And the question is whether or not that's scripted or if you just go off the cuff.
Talky talk at the beginning, I do, it's kind of a technique I learned at one of my previous jobs. I use bullet points. This is Stella, everybody. Stella. We're dog sitting Stella. She's hanging out for the week. As far as the talky talk goes, I use bullet points. So I'll bullet point, talk about A Light on April 5th. Then I'll bullet point, remind them 4 episodes are left. Then I'll bullet point, tease into the ad. So that's all scripted out. And by doing bullet points, I'm able to remember everything, which is difficult for me because if I don't use bullet points, I'm going to say these 5 things, I'll say 3 and then make up 1, 2 out, and I get frustrated. Bullet points make sure I stay on task and say everything that needs to be said, but it comes out in my naturally effervescent personality, and I'm not reading straight off of a script. So that's how I do it. This is how we do it. Dun, dun, dun.
Wow.
This is how we do it.
This happens all the time. All right, moving on. These are actual Alive questions. So here's your one spoiler alert. If you haven't read Alive, everything we talk about from here forward, absolutely potential spoilers. For this book, for the GFL, if those questions come up, for anything.
Yeah.
So just be forewarned.
I know.
Try and give you a spoiler.
I know you're looking at an awful lot of pretty going on right now with all of this, the 3 of us right here. But seriously, we're going to spoil the living shit out of everything. Why? Because we're doing it live. Do it live.
Okay.
So if you've been warned, so stay tuned if you like, but if not, turn it off, and we'll have this up on YouTube eventually and as a podcast. And then you may come back later after you've read all of the books and give me all of your money.
So Tom Murphy asks, was the Zolul actually made of stone a la Moonbase Alpha and Space 1999, or is this a false perception of the birthday children?
Well, I'll tell you guys. I can't tell you guys. You'll have to wait for book 2 and book 3 to find out if it was made of stone, if it was not made of stone, and if it's real or false perception. So there's probably the shortest answer of the day is I can't tell you. Ha, ha, ha.
Okay.
Now I have machine gun too. Ha, ha, ha. It's from Die Hard.
Did Brewer awaken the birthday children, or was that predetermined via AI or equivalent?
That I can tell you, Brewer did wake up the birthday children, and there'll be more explanation of that come possibly book 3. In book 3, you'll get to find out more of what's going on. But it was a conscious decision by him to wake people up. It was not AI. So there is some drama going on. Drama going on there.
And if any of you are, we just got an email, and I'm so sorry, that was my fault. If any of you are trying to email a question, you can email it to info@emptyset.com. I think we said email@scottsigler.com, and that doesn't work. So it's email@emptyset.com.
Email at emptyset or info?
Info@emptyset.com or media@scottsigler.com.
Info@emptyset.com. Suckers. Mail in them questions.
Has the Zolitl been in orbit around Omeacon for some time, or did it just arrive?
Okay. I'm trying to figure out now I'm going to spoil the crap out of Live, but I don't want to spoil anything from Alight and spoil anything from Alone or from the prequel. But it's been in orbit. I'll say it's been in orbit. Let's see, that's Alight. It's been in orbit for a little while. It's been a minute. It's been in orbit for a couple of minutes. So, you know what? I'm sorry. Bailing out. I can't do it. I am Rocky in the corner, but I'm throwing in the towel. I'm not going to let Apollo Creed die in the ring. Throwing in the towel. I can't answer that right now.
Tom has one more question.
Yes, Tom.
Or sort of question, statement. There's been an apparent lack or strong impression of a lack of circle birthday children, and that seems to be relevant. But he's lost to the significance and curious as to whether anything more can be shared on this issue at this time.
I will say that Alight comes out on April 5th, 2016. And you'll absolutely want to read that book the day it comes out, if you can get it, for the answer to that question.
If you can get it.
If you got to talk to some people, you got to make a deal at a bookstore, get your hands on it early, I highly advise you do this. It's going to benefit you in the long run, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. All right. Billy Vincent says, first off, he loves the GFL. And
cool.
And Earth Core and everything else, and now he's moving on to Alive questions.
Mm-hmm.
Probably already answered this. Whoa.
Go ahead.
But why the schoolgirl and schoolboy attire for the birthday children? Billy, he asked whether it's an anime fetish. This is a young adult book.
It's a young adult book. There's no anime fetish. Well, first of all, it was a lot of times that is a over-sexualized look. So people, that is a fantasy thing in books for both genders, the schoolboy, schoolgirl look. And it was a big part of establishing that M and her cohorts are kind of like, they just walked out of an Abercrombie and Fitch catalog. You know, it's not quite jailbait, but pretty close to it, but everybody's beautiful and perfect. And those school uniforms also position them at the 12-year-old age, show them getting beyond the 12-year-old age, because the clothes don't fit anymore. And the other real purpose of it was to show the arc. So in the beginning of the book, everybody's pretty and perfect and their clothes are too tight, and that's very sultry, and it creates hormonal responses and emotional responses that they're not prepared to deal with. By the end of the book, those that are still wearing clothes, their clothes are all torn up, they're bloody, they're dirty, they're covered in dust and ash, which is, decomposed dead bodies. So it's really to show that arc from and it's a bit of a red herring. It's like, let's show you this stylized ideal of what beauty is: youth, perfect beauty, perfect skin, perfect faces, etc. By the end, everybody's beat to hell, because at the end they become the people that they really are, when they have fought for their survival and earned the right to live, as opposed to just everything being gifted to them when they wake up in perfect bodies.
Okay, so Kat, who's in the hangout right now, asks if M has theme music. And it's capital M, if M has theme music, and if she does, have a song for when you're writing her, like you have for some of your other characters.
For Alive, I had a playlist for Alive. Maybe we can publish that someday. It's quite long, but it is all gothic-y instrumental music, a lot of classical music. There's just a ton of kind of over-the-top cinematic type songs, soundtrack type songs. But I don't think I had one specifically for M. So I did not this time. I've had them for the main character of every other book, but not for M.
Amber asked, do we get more history of the society and the classes in a light?
Yes.
Okay, well, that was easy.
I'm sorry, I'll get a little longer with that. Yes, you absolutely have some of the history. A lot of the history will go into book 3. But you get enough history in book 2 that you will be very happy. You'll be tickled.
Rory in Australia first suggests we practice next time.
No kidding, Rory. We got that down.
We got that.
I thought she knew what to do. She thought I knew. We've both been on, I'm going to guess, dozens and dozens of hangouts.
Maybe.
And we both thought the other one knew how to do it. So
good luck. Good for us. The Noisy Astronomer was able to save the day at the last second.
Thanks for the advice, Rory, and thank you, Noisy Astronomer, for saving the day at the last second. We still can't get half the shit to work.
Yeah.
But that's what happens when you do it live.
Wow.
Yeah.
Next time we'll practice.
We will absolutely practice.
He does also have a question, which is, was this really conceived as a single book, but you've split it for commercial reasons? The story seems really light on 2 days elapsed, I think, and is not in keeping with your normal standard of weighty tomes in both length, breadth, and range.
Okay, that's a more complicated question. So originally, I wrote, Alive started out as a book called Flyer, which I have read at several cons and several events, at least the first couple chapters, the chapters of M waking up. And I originally envisioned a 5-book series. With now that you've read Alive, for example, book 1 was just them getting to the point where they realized they were on a ship, so that trended out quite well. And then originally there were other ships in this flotilla, and they gradually had to take over the other ships and then gradually make their way down to the planet. And it was I had this sprawling 5-book giant sci-fi fantasy thing planned out. My agent read Alive and said, nope, we got to keep it more simple. And then we had a 120,000 word book, which was basically book 1 and book 2. And we sent that to, when Del Rey bought it, they loved the break point of the kids getting off the ship and leaving you hanging to go to Omeokun. So you have a complete story in them waking up and needing to get off the ship to get away from the grown-ups to stay alive. But it obviously, Star Wars Episode 4 obviously leads into the next thing. And that led us to, so that was the first 40,000 words. And then I got a rare opportunity as a writer where they said, 40,000 words, we want that as book 1. The other 80,000 words is book 2. And they said, but you can flesh out book 1 if you want. I'm like, great. So I got to go through the whole thing and turn into an 80,000 word book, which is the length you see now. So basically I have to double the length of that story, really get more into the meat of the characters. And then book 2 wound up swelling up as well. I turned it as 80,000 words. A light ended up as 108,000 28,000 words, so added 28,000 words to that. I'm not going to do the math off the top of my head, but it's 250 words per page. And that is where we went. And now as I head into writing book 3, that basically probably would have been book 5 of my original pentology.
I guess so.
So that's kind of, it's a difficult answer to nail down, because when I started this out 7 years ago, 6 years ago?
2010.
2010, yeah. So, and that's the first time she saw it. And then there was in the works as a straight up movie pitch before that. So this has gone all the way from submitting a single log line to my film agent saying, what about a pitch for this? To writing the first few chapters, writing an outline, having it bounce off the film agent, the editor, bounce it off of bounce it off of me, going with the publisher demanding rewrites and drafts. So it's really gone through a lot of hurdles to get to where it is now. I hope I answered your question.
So Leslie Joyce just wrote into the info just to say thank you, which we totally appreciate.
Thank you for this bumbling effort at a Google Hangout, Leslie. You're welcome.
Yay!
You're welcome.
Steve Compton wrote, is the ship that Em and her friends are traveling on the same cylindrical copper/bronze colored ship as referenced in the crypt? Also, can we divulge at what spot in the Siglerverse timeline does Alive fall?
The second part of your question is I can't tell you where it falls in the Siglerverse yet, but it does fall in the Siglerverse. You're going to have to wait and see. There are tie-ins to books that have not yet been written, so I can't spoil that for you. And as to your first question, I also can't spoil that for you as well. Just please pray to whatever higher power you have that I don't get hit by a bus or die in the next 15 years. So we can tie it all together. But yeah, those are definitely related.
Todd Taylor, and thank you for watching. I think you're not. I think you're not U.S. based, so
Actually, Todd, thank you, Todd, for being the first one to chime in, so we could see that this was actually working.
He says he loved Alive, and for the first time, he really feels like a junkie because he's finally able to listen to the podcast weekly without being spoiled to previous books. Emma Galvin fits the part of M perfectly. My question, though this may be jumping ahead a bit, can you tell us why, without spoiling too much, the title of the third book changed from Away to Alone?
It's in my head, it's bounced back and forth like 100 times. Should it be away? Should it be alone? Away, alone, right? Away. Aloft.
The other. It was
aloft.
Then it was away. Then it was away alone. Then it was aloft.
I'm a big fan of the alliteration of alone, alight, aloft, or alone, alight.
Alone, alight, alone, aloft, away.
Away. So I got rid of away. That wasn't working out. And so because I can't really get into the story specifics of why those particular names are very specific to book 3 and to the prequel. But right now, book 3 is Alone. Mm-hmm. And then if I ever get to write the prequel, which will be Matilda's story, that's Aloft. So now it fits very well. A was pushing for that setup from square one, and I vacillated back and forth between the two a dozen times. And then finally, I had told Del Rey that book 3 was going to be Aloft, and the prequel would be Away. Now I'm totally lost again. What the hell is it called?
The prequel is Aloft.
Prequel's Aloft.
The first book's Alive.
Yep.
Second book's Alight.
Light and Alone.
Yep.
So Aloft and Alone, those switched, and Del Rey said they wanted Alone to be book 3, and they're writing a check. So, mm-hmm. And I wasn't going to fight for that because I was vacillating anyway. So now everybody involved in this with me has said Alone should be book 3, and that's going to be book 3, and I can't tell you why.
Andreas Kimming asks, I wonder if you got any inspiration from the author Orson Scott Card. I've heard in more than one of your books references to some of his books, or rather things from the books. Or is it just coincidences and I'm reading too much into things?
If there are any real coincidences in there, I think you're probably reading in. Also, they could possibly be subliminal. I may have picked up some things. I think Ender's Game is just an unbelievably brilliant novel. It's one of my favorite novels. Also a YA book. Well, before they started selling books as YA, it came out before that, so they didn't really market it as YA. But it's definitely a same age group as the people in the Generations Trilogy. So nothing really intentional. There was absolutely a lot of intentional crossover, reference, and subterfuge with Lord of the Flies, but not so much with Orson Scott Card's work or Ender's Game.
Marcus asked, so I'll just check again because he didn't know you were already going to answer it. Do you want to tell us where it fits in the Siglerverse?
Hi, Marcus. No.
Okay.
I can't tell you. It does absolutely fit in the Siglerverse. And also to take the pressure off you guys, there's no way you could figure it out right now. So don't be pouring back through other books. The connectors to the Siglerverse have not yet been written in a form that you can see.
Jennifer Hathorn asks, why does Aramofsky stop fighting his progenitor during the battle in the orchard? Is it a mind-controlling effect, or was he conditioned by his beliefs to submit to authority?
Aramofsky believes so deeply in the religion that he can't really remember and doesn't have the ability to process. He just has those internal, that internal feelings that he sort of knows what's right. Like a lot of religious and belief constructs, most all of us, almost all the time, we're pretty sure we're in the right, and he believes he's in the right. So when he stops fighting Aramofsky, he is perfectly willing to go join. He wants to join his progenitor and let them become one, as it was meant, as it was foretold. So let it be written, so let it be done.
She also asked, and I love this question, was it wrong for Matilda, the monster/progenitor, to want to live?
I don't think so at all. That's one of the things I'm trying to create with this, is some serious moral ambiguity, which is once M self-actualizes and becomes her own person and not just a vehicle for someone else, she absolutely wants to live her own life, and she wants to survive. And Matilda has, if anybody deserves to survive, it's Matilda. The stuff she has gone through to get to this point is very significant. Even from what you know, imagine living for 1,000 years in pain in a ship, traveling to a place, so that then you doing all of that so that you can live in this young body that you have created and kind of go live in paradise. If somebody took that away from you, you'd be super pissed off. And so she absolutely deserves to live. And that's something I try and throw on to you, the reader, is both groups deserve to live. Both individuals deserve to live. So you have to decide if you want to root for one or root for both, or just sit and wait and see what happens. But I don't believe in making easy good and evil in books. This isn't the 40s. This isn't the 50s. The bad guy and the bad girl aren't just these evil caricatures. They're real people with real motivations, and their survival is just as important to them as it is to our protagonists. So if I ever do get to write the prequel, it'll blow your pants off seeing what Matilda's had to go through to get to this point.
So if any of you are making comments in the Hangout or emailing us asking about or telling us how to turn on the Q&A chat, it's clearly something in our Google accounts that I'm not going to stop and try and fix now, because we already bumblefucked through 10 minutes at the beginning. So I understand it and appreciate it, but we're not going to fix that now. So you can stop emailing and commenting on how to do that, because tried the simple part, but it's something in our actual account setup that I don't have time to look at. Sorry. So
that's Animal from the Muppets.
The Muppets, yes. Antonio asks, oh, does he ask anything? No. Just want to shout out and say I love the story. Rock on.
Thank you, sir.
And started listening last year. Caught up. Yep. Okay. Unrelated question. Are you guys shooting in front of a green screen? No, we're not. This is our shipping. These are books.
See, this is what I was doing, unfortunately, when I should have been testing the Q&A. I was like, I want a really nice backdrop with all of our books and stuff. There's like T-shirts hanging behind us to block out the backlight. So not the best use of my time, but it's awful pretty.
It is that. Okay. So Marie, hi. We met Marie in Greeley.
Okay.
And she asks, Emma Galvin pronounces many names differently than Marie did in her own head. As an author, having other people read your work, how do you deal with issues of pronunciation and differences in intonation? How much do you oversee this as the audio works are being produced? And how much do you just say, screw it, that's how it's pronounced now?
Well, that was a difficult thing, and it's been hard to get used to. Emma is obviously very good at what she does. She's also a New Zealander, I believe, and which you don't even know until you start to communicate with her outside of her narration work, because her English accent is great. There's only like 3 or 4 words per book. You're like, whoa, what is that? And she does a great job. I sent her a phonetic pronunciation list of everything, and she got most of it right. Some things she just kind of went in a different direction with it, or didn't. Maybe I had spelled things phonetically incorrect, or she may have got in her head. Then once she was reading live, it just came out differently. So some of that was because I wasn't there to produce, and I weren't there to produce. Her brother Adrian Galvin produces everything, but we were in a bit of a time crunch, and they finished the whole book and sent it to us, and then we went through, and Steve Rickyberg went through and corrected for it. Did you do that, or Steve did that?
Steve did that.
Steve did that. He went through and corrected to make sure the words were right to the page. So we did correct some pronunciation things, but not too much. We kind of let a lot of it roll. Hopefully we can address, they're really, really minor issues. We might address that in book 2, or to keep consistency, because most people listening to the audiobook aren't as involved in the community as you guys are. We may just let it all ride. We don't want to change things in midstream now.
And there was also, it just happens sometimes. There's so many characters in the book. I know in Pandemic, which we haven't podcast yet, so if you're wondering whether or not we're going to podcast it, the answer is yes, someday. If you need to hear it on audio, you can buy that on Amazon or Audible or iTunes, but we'll probably podcast it in late 2007 once the Generations Trilogy is over. But Phil Gigante published or pronounced Paulius Klimas's name differently than you do.
Yes.
And it's how I would have done it, but that's not how you do it.
Right. So there's subtle differences, but we're learning more as we hire other people to do these audiobooks, that you get it as right as you can get it, but they are performers and they are creators and artists unto their own right. And at some point you just have to let go of the reins and say, I drove Phil Gigante crazy for
also me.
Also her, I tried to control the pauses between end of sentence and he said and his pronunciations, and I was a pain in the ass. It was a real pain in the ass.
Yes.
So learning to let go of that and let the artists do what they do, I think is an important growth moment for me and for us as a company. So there you go.
Moving on, Nathaniel has a question from Southwest Washington.
Okay.
He asks, when writing live, how much did you draw upon your experience as a dungeon master back in the day?
Oh, everything I do draws upon the experience as a dungeon master. Now, of course, you can see that in a live because they're in a frigging dungeon. So that's easy to do. But game master, dungeon master, all of that stuff, I was doing all that largely from the 6th grade on, 6th, 7th grade on. So that gave me storytelling instincts. It honed a lot of storytelling instincts from being able to sit down at a table with 5, 6, 7 other people and roll out a plot and watch their reactions in real time, and try and figure out how to push their buttons to make them super angry or super sad, super emotional, etc. So yeah, game mastering was an invaluable part of me developing my storytelling style and technique and everything else.
Mm-hmm. Shane Hunter's email or comment/question I love your voice acting and even your female voices.
They're special.
They're unique.
They're unique. My female voices are unique.
You've hired other people to voice some of your other books. The voices were great too, but I think the best thing is to be consistent with the person who's doing the voice acting.
Mm-hmm.
That way it makes the character feel like the same person voice-wise from book to book.
Mm-hmm.
We do too. He didn't actually answer or ask a question, and we agree with you. It's interesting how market forces work in there.
Mm-hmm.
We had all sorts of high hopes for Scott to read Pandemic, and I know lots of people want him to read Pandemic, and the reality is he wouldn't read Pandemic at all. It wouldn't be out there as an audiobook probably ever, and certainly not in the next 3 years, because we just don't have the time. We're contracted to do other things and we don't have that kind of time. So we had to choose somebody else, and we chose Phil for that. And then we'd like to work with Phil again, but he's been pretty busy and he can't actually do that. So moving forward, we'd like to do that as well, just like we're contracting with Emma to read A Light, but we can't contract on a book that doesn't exist. So if she's too busy or she retires or anything like that between A Light and Alone,
Mm-hmm.
she won't read Alone. And there's nothing we can do about it, as much as we'd like to. And to be fair, she would like to. That's not always how that works.
Yep, that's a very good answer to all of that business right there.
Nelson, our pal Nelson.
Nelson.
Asks, and this is funny because I don't know how to say it exactly. What is the correct pronunciation of the planet name Omeocan?
Yeah, that was one
Omeocan.
that's one that got away from us with Emma. She pronounces it Omeocan, and it's in my head. It's always been Omeocan. So I'm trying Omeocan in my head.
One of mine.
I try and get it. It's really hard to look some of this stuff up because I'll give you a brief spoiler in that there's Mayan and Aztec influences in this religion that is the background for the birthday children, and trying to find pronunciation guides for these things is difficult, and it's very different. Like the Zolitl, in some places that's pronounced Zolitl, on some websites that's the Exolotl, in some places the Zolitl, so it's a little bit all over the place. But that's kind of my impression was Omeocan.
Okay. So Simon asked a question. This is a big question. Lots of you guys asked it. Lots of you guys emailed in. Lots of you guys commented on the forums on scottsigler.com and also on the Facebook page. He has a question about the physics of the spaceship in Alive. And I understand how you would feel like you're constantly walking uphill as you walk around the inside diameter of the spinning cylinder. But after the conversation with Brewer, M's internal dialogue as they return the birthday children is, we all run downhill. But wouldn't it be uphill no matter which way you traversed the inner curve?
The thing a lot of people forget, and what's great, is there's some nasty comments on Audible and on Amazon, like, you got it wrong, which is sounds a lot like you do it live. It's, people are not forgetting this. I had to look this up. I didn't know this. It's spinward or anti-spinward. So if you're going spinward, you actually are, see if I have this right. If you're walking in the direction of the spin, the thing is rotating like this while you're walking. So it's actually like going downhill because the floor is sort of dropping away from you a little bit. So spinward feels like walking downhill. If you're walking anti-spinward, no, it's the other way around. Sorry, totally sorry. If you're walking anti-spinward, the floor is sort of coming to meet you, and it's tangential momentum and the Coriolis effect. So we were going to post some links here for people to look at, but maybe I'll put that in a newsletter or we'll post it later. There's a couple of articles online that do a good job of presenting it. And I'll go grab that in a second and give you guys that link. But that's what it comes down to. If you are walking against the spin, that feels like you're walking downhill. If you're walking, imagine, okay, let me try it one more time. Imagine you're in a giant oil barrel, and as you walk, you're stepping on that oil barrel and it starts to roll with you. Now imagine that oil barrel spin is consistent. So if you're walking with the spin, it's easier because the back is coming up while you step forward. You're actually stepping downhill a little bit. If you are walking against the spin of that oil barrel, then you are actually lifting your foot up a little bit more to hit the thing as it's coming towards you. So look it up if you like. I'll try and make some of these links available. Maybe we'll put up an article. That's a good blog post.
Yeah.
We'll do that at scottsigler.com.
And one of the other things that happened quite a lot is people, as they learned more about where the ship was compared to the planet, Omeokin, they thought that the dynamics of how the passengers on the ship, how the birthday children felt when they were walking and felt the ship move when they were walking, had to do with the pull against the planet. And there were some really sort of, oh yeah, no, you're totally wrong kind of comments, which was awesome because it was interesting and fun because they weren't necessarily correct either. So we'll post links if we can ever figure out how to do that.
Here's what you Google frame effects, and no, not that one. I'm
going to send it to Nicole, and maybe Nicole can do it.
I wonder if Nicole can help. But the Bad Astronomer helped us with this.
As did Nicole.
And so we had actual genuine astronomy PhDs helping us with this. So here's a URL for you to go look at. It's very long. www.npl.washington.edu/AV/ALTVW18.html. Very nice, right? And basically, here's an article from Forbes, which talks about deep space exploration will demand additional gravity. And here's the takeaway paragraph. In an artificial gravity environment, astronauts would still be aware they were on a rotating surface. Walk with the spin, and the effect would feel a bit like walking downhill because the floor is falling away. Walk opposite the spin, and it would be a bit like walking uphill because the floor would be rising. And if walking perpendicular to the spin in either direction, you would feel as if they were falling slightly sideways. I missed the falling slightly sideways part, but the diameter of this thing is so big, and we'll figure out the actual math at some point down the road in the series. It's so big that it's a really subtle effect. And the uphill and downhill was also more of a metaphor for the struggles that the characters are going through. They kept walking uphill no matter what they did. They seemed like they were walking uphill. And then when they go downhill, that's when they have changed their mind, and they're like, now they're on the offensive. They're more aggressive, and they're taking their destiny in their own hands.
So for those of you in the comments who are looking for the Dog of Doom, she's here. She is less interested in being on camera than Stella is. So, but I wanted to show you guys her since you were asking. John Vizcar, Big John Vizcar, has just the one question, which is, your interactions with Del Rey appear to be so much more involved than your interactions with Crown. Mm-hmm. Do you perceive more of an involved relationship in terms of marketing, general support, or anything else?
Well, it was the relationship with Crown was fantastic. They did a really good job. They kind of came out of the gate swinging for Infected, and Contagious, and then there were some internal issues with Ancestor. And this is the way the business works. It's a lot like a record label. When you put out a band's first record, you're kind of all in, and then if that record doesn't do what you want it to do, then the second record, maybe by the third record, you're like, okay, well, we'll finish the contract putting things out, but we're not as invested in it as we were before. So the old days in the 70s and early 80s, they would try and develop an act, which is like, by album 5, we're gonna make a ton of money off these guys, like the Creedence Clearwater Revival type approach. Once market forces dictate that has changed, and now they're really trying to hit it out of the park with the first couple of books. So I think Crown did a great job, but when you start a new book with a new publisher, they are very excited. It's new, it's shiny, and they put a lot of effort into everything. So I think Del Rey is very invested in book 1. They also felt that book 1 is kind of their let's seed the soil, start planting seeds, and get ready for book 2. So what we've been told is their efforts for book 2 may be more significant than their efforts for book 1, which would be amazing because they did a great job with book 1, but they're kind of following their own success plan they did with Pierce Brown's Red Rising. They put out book 1, they give it a pretty heavy push, and then they kept giving that book away for free in different formats and poured on the gas for book 2, so we'll see what happens. But I'm happy with both. I'm happy with both publishers. I think Crown did a great job. They were super fun to work with.
Ethan asks, will you ever be releasing a timeline of the Sigler universe for where each book falls? I'm assuming it would be easy to guess for us fans, but seeing an illustration would be very sweet. Also, please sell some action figures of GFL species. I would be all over those.
The answer number 1 is we've done that in some regards. We try to do that, and we need to do a better job, especially with GFL books. It's really difficult because there's a lot of overlap with the novellas. Like book 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 obviously fall, but where the novellas fall is kind of staggered. So we have tried to come up with a reading order, but the reading order would basically be, we'll try and shoot it out right now, and eventually we'll get this up. We have more time to think about it. But Infected, Contagious, Ancestor Nocturnal, Pandemic, Earth Core, when that comes out. Mm-hmm. Before those, Kissy Man. Then after Earth Core, we're going to have Crypt Book 1, eventually Crypt Book 2. Then after that, we've got the Rookie, the Starter.
The Rookie, the Starter, the Reporter. The Rookie, the Starter, the All-Pro, the Reporter.
The Rookie, the Starter, the All-Pro, the Reporter, and the Detective. Mm-hmm. And then we've got the MVP and the Champion, and Title Fight. Title Fight's also with the Rookie. So probably the Rookie, Title Fight, the Starter, the All-Pro, the Reporter, the Detective, the MVP, the Champion, and then book 6 and hopefully other novellas.
Yeah. So Rusty, you also asked about the orbital dynamics. We're going to leave that answer as it was, since we did such an enormously good job answering that.
Yes. Yes. It's a lot like cramming for a test, you guys. I got everything right when I did the book, and now a lot of that's it's like cramming for that history exam. You know, you're never going to need this information again.
Daniel, we also answered your question about where Alive falls in the Siglerverse. He didn't just put it in that timeline, but that's on purpose.
I can't tell you.
Yes.
I can't tell you.
David asks, I'd love to know how you went about finding, then choosing the excellent Emma Galvin as narrator. Finding is probably the wrong word, as Emma is a well-established narrator, but what appealed to you about her style?
Well, the audiobook market's fascinating in a lot of ways. And A and I, we're heavily invested in audiobooks. That's kind of our primary thing right now, next to finishing up the GFL series in style, because these things are digital. They sit up on a server. There's no cost to maintain, no cost for inventory, and you make X% every time one is downloaded. So the books we have up now will probably still be selling in some degree for us 20, even 30 years from now. So that's really where our primary business thrust is at. To find, when I tried reading Alive, we gave up on that almost immediately because it's just creepy. We've talked about this at cons and at Sigler Fest. I'm pretty good at reading chapter 1. The second chapter 3 hits and 2 teenage girls start talking to each other, and I'm
about
doing
their
both
clothes and their bodies
and their boobs, talking about their boobs. It sounds wicked super creepy. Like I have a van with painted windows somewhere. Yeah. So we said we needed to find a female narrator for it, and we said, well, as long as we're doing that, let's go see if we swing for the fences and get a big name, what'll happen. And we asked around. We asked Kristen Cast, who's a friend of mine, she's got a series with a teenage female narrator, and we looked at her narrator for those books. We looked at a lot of people, and then I was like, all right, what are the biggest books out there narrated by women? And Divergent went right to the top. I think I listened to the narrator from Twilight, and she didn't sound right for the part, but the Divergent series, a woman named Emma Galvin, and it was weird. I had to hunt all over the place to figure out how to contact her. She didn't have a web page. She didn't have a Facebook profile. Finally tracked her down, and all we did was say, hey, do you want to do this book? And she was down for it.
Yeah, and they're great. They're really, really nice people. They're really fun to work with. She and her brother work together to produce finished audio. We get finished audio. So it's been great so far. And she's, like I said, they're both on board to do a line. So moving on, I want to tell you thank you to Maria and to Nicole for posting links to Orbital Physics in the Hangout. Also, Kelly showed you the Dog of Doom. I will also say no whole damn dino. No writer yet. The writer is in production. It should be out as an ebook sometime in the next 3 months, and as an audiobook hopefully sometime soonish, but I don't exactly know when, because we have made a promise that Scott will read all of the GFL books as audiobooks, so we need to get that recorded, and that's 80 some odd thousand words, so that's going to take a while, but we are working on it, I promise. And let's see, there's a question about whether or not if ever will there be a German version of Alive, and we hope so, but the answer is I don't know, because we don't control this. Del Rey obviously controls Alive and controls the sales and the requests, and as far as I know, there hasn't been a request made for Alive in German, but if you want to petition whichever publisher you love there, that would be the best
if you have a favorite publisher, petition. I guarantee you at some point there will be a German version. I can't say when. Again, I go back to I think Del Rey's primary focus is on letting book 1 slowly build with word of mouth, and then in book 2, I think they'll probably put the gas on more to go out and sell more foreign rights. So right now, it just has not been a big priority for them. We've gotten weird ones too, like not Portuguese, but anyways, we'll keep working on that for sure.
Also, all of you commenting, yes, I heard it too. You said tangenitals instead of tangential.
Oh.
So there you go. That's the kind of hangouts we run. You shouldn't be surprised. We bumblefuck for 10 minutes at the beginning. It's no big surprise. Yeah,
well, you know what? I took 10 minutes of your life away that you never get back. I gave you back tangenitals. See?
There is, yeah.
It's an economy. It's give and take, supply and demand.
Okay, so where did I just lost it?
I don't know. You're the one with tangenitals. Don't ask me.
John Vizcarra, Big John Vizcarra, has just the one question.
Just the one question. Just one question.
Which is, how do you feel, or do you feel your editor was trying to shape the story and series, or do you feel that your editor was helping you tell your best story?
I think it's a little bit of both. An editor's job, they're kind of like the navigator of a ship. The amount of people that go into building the ship and the crew and stocking the ship and loading everything up, that's all sunk cost that the person piloting the ship doesn't have anything to do with, but you still got to steer that along a certain path and get it into a certain port. And that's largely what Mark Tavani's the editor, what he was trying to do. So it's weird because there's a lot of specific advice he can give, like, gotta see more from this character, you're overdoing it here, back off on this, give me more on this, etc. And then you get this weird esoteric gray area. He's like, yeah, it's just not enough of something here. And then you, as the author, you have to be like, you're not even speaking English. What are you talking? What's the words for what you want to say? And they have to come back and go, I don't know. This part just doesn't feel right. Can you do something with it? And then you kind of work through it from there. So I think it's a little bit of both. They obviously want a specific style of product to take to market, but they wouldn't have bought the book if they didn't like the book in the first place. So they do try and do a little bit of shaping. Largely what they do is cut. They're trying to, because I'm a bit verbose at times, and this book came in at 120 something. It was way up there.
Or a light.
A light. No, a light.
A light came in at around 122,000 that first draft, and they were like, "Yeah,
Gotta cut it."
And one of the things that they were very attenuated to is they wanted to make sure that it fit in the series, and Alive was not that long,
Mm-hmm.
and they wanted them to sort of fit well together. So I'm going to guess that Alone will also have to hit between, I'd say, maybe 80,000 and 105,000 words, but
yeah,
it's going to be a challenge. It's always a challenge.
That's not going to happen. They're in for a surprise. But I will say, like, there were no fights, if that's what you're asking for. When I got the final draft, his final draft of A Light back, he completely cut out 2 chapters, and I had to go back and say, yeah, I see you think these are verbose, but there's things that are foreshadowed and seeded here that absolutely show up later. And then I'm like, but I cut that chapter in half. And he's like, great, then put it back in. So It worked out great. He's super cool to work with.
Donnie Bliss actually sent a question from his 12-year-old daughter.
Yes,
which
sweet.
is, why do all the birthday children think that it's their 12th birthday?
Because Donnie Bliss's daughter,
Avery,
that is when they were supposed to wake up. They were supposed to wake up at that physical age, and the mental age framework they've had embedded in them all stops at the day they are 12 years old. So the technology that creates them brought up to that level. Where things went fakakta, where things went fakakta.
He's the Jew. He's the Jew. Can't say the Yiddish.
I don't know the words with the Yiddish. I can't help you. Where things went off the rails is they continued to gestate and grow for an unspecified amount of time, which I can't tell you right now, which eventually led them to their 18, 19-year-old bodies. Mm-hmm. So that's the answer. They were supposed to wake up on their 12th birthday with that much memory and no memory after that. That's kind of the big thing. They have no memories programmed from that point on. And then when Matilda overwrote, everybody would have been happy.
Right. So John Vizcarra has just the one question.
Just one question, John.
Which is, when do we get a Cribs San Diego edition?
We've actually shot one with my parents, and it turned out not so good.
Yeah,
not so good.
All the Siglers not as hammy as this one. So we actually have a plan to have our video director / producer come down, spend a day at the office. He lives in San Diego as well, just not terribly close to the office. And his name's Doug. He'll come to the office. We have a handful of things planned for that day. Among them is Cribs San Diego edition.
It was fun shooting my parents, though, because my
yeah.
dad kind of got the gist of it pretty quick. My mom not so much.
No.
There's a lot of, damn it, Carol, don't look into the camera. Stop, come on, Carol, and just general getting mad.
Yeah, there's that. So
and then once I got mad at her, she was just like, that doesn't happen. So.
Chris Hughes asks, you have a long and glorious history of writing girthy books. How did you manage to scale it back for Alive? I think we kind of just answered that. The question is not terribly well. He didn't manage it terribly well. This was supposed to be an 80,000 word book. That
was an editor coming back and saying, no. That's basically what it was. If I'd had my druthers, it would have been about 150, 160,000 words for sure. And Alone would easily be 210. It'd be a big book.
Yeah, and this is a little obviously unrelated to Alive, but we've gone back and forth with the GFL series because I'm interested in how much the book costs to print and how much it costs to ship and how big of a shipping box we need, because if we can get a shipping box that works snugly with the book, then I don't have to also buy extra shipping materials. None of these things are a concern to Scott. I imagine they're not that much of a concern to you, but they're a big concern to me. And these books have all grown by at least, 5,000 words a piece, a little bit more, at least. And every time I say that, he says, no, they haven't. No, they haven't. Wait 1 moment.
So she'll stack those up. Let's see what we have here.
Dudes, look. Hello. It's like a half an inch bigger. And this didn't fit in the boxes that we ordered.
Yeah, the Champion's really, really long.
And so here's the interesting part of this. We've said a bunch of times that there are probably 7 books in the GFL. There's the potential now that the story will wrap up in 6, and I made a promise to him. I'm going to make it to all of you. I don't care how big that book is. If he finishes the GFL series in 6 books, I will figure out a way to ship that gigantic book.
If we finish up in 6, just basically combine those 2 right there. And
yeah,
that'll be the book.
That's going to be hard to do. Let's see. Daniel asks, How is it that the new birthday children are only 12 years old in body size when the original birthday children are 200 years older? Where the new children started 200 years later, where we weren't really told, unless I missed it, when the process of the creating of the body started for M and her colleagues, but I presumed it was at the beginning of the 1,000-year voyage. How does this story, or does it, fit into the Siglerverse timeline? So
can't answer that. I can't answer that question right now. I can say that you'll probably get all of that math at some point. And I also will not tease you and say that that is answered in book 2, because it's not. You're going to have to wait for book 3, possibly even the prequel. So one of the things I'm playing with right now is, and I really hope Del Rey picks up the prequel, because I love working with them. They're great. If they don't, eventually A&I will put that out. But a lot of Alive is, let's see how these characters operate without any background. So they have when they start out, there's no cultural background of any kind. They have no significant memories, basically, other than how to talk. And how does that impact a character wandering around in this intellectual vacuum of having no knowledge of what's going on? The vacuum is critical for book 2. You get some ramifications of this coming in book 2 as some of the memories start to percolate up to the top. But I may finish the whole series without them ever having all of this knowledge. And then you'll have to go back and read the prequel to find out how things got to be there. So I'm not entirely sure whether you'll get an accurate answer for that in book 3, but you definitely will by the prequel for sure.
Don, you're totally right. Scott is super pleased with himself that every book gets bigger than the one before it. So yes, super pleased with himself. Me a little less so, but if you guys are happy, I'm mostly happy, which is mostly a lie. I mostly want it on time and on budget, but for book 6, I will take whatever you guys and he wants.
Yeah.
Mario, who identifies himself as a Mexican Spaniard living in Berlin.
Okay.
Asks, what's with the Aztec motif? At the beginning in the coffin room, I thought you were going somewhere with it. Perhaps it's something for book 2 or book 3?
Actually, perhaps it's something for how it ties into the larger Siglerverse.
Oh, Lord.
Can't tell you right now. I can't tell you right now, but I can promise you that question will absolutely be answered in a book that is not in the Generations Trilogy.
All right. So Brian Good has a handful of questions. One is how it fits in the Siglerverse, which of course we've answered by not answering.
Right.
2, how is the process of writing a YA book now that you've written a bunch versus the initial rewrite of the Rookie and or the Starter?
It's a very difficult process for me because I have to deviate from my natural language, which if any of you have ever hung out with me is full of naughty words and suggestive phrases, etc., and just largely loud and obnoxious. And that's not applicable in some regards to a YA book. Even though I didn't start out writing this to be a YA book, it clearly gravitated towards that pretty quickly and shaped where things would go. More so for book 2 and 3 than book 1. But you're sort of writing out of your element. You have to get your head into another place, not just another adult like yourself that happens to be of a different ethnicity or a different gender. Those things are fairly easy to do just by talking to your friends. But going back actually in years mentally was pretty difficult. So as I've said, once we finish Generations Trilogy and finish the GFL, I'm not sure I'll do any more YA books, although market forces could dictate.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell. And I also have, out of our database of 200 potential novels that we're writing stuff in every day, there's a bunch of them in there that are absolutely YA. And we don't know. We'll see what happens. I mean, if the Generations Trilogy was to blow up and get like 1/20th of the sales of Divergent, and people wanted to hear more of that, we would find a way to make that happen. So sure. It's difficult, but we manage.
Brian also asked if there's any word on the Jonathan Sandoval novella. So, sir, I know you mentioned in your question that I shouldn't, what did you say? Please don't hurt you? Yeah, there's no Jonathan Sandoval novella. There's no no Jonathan Sandoval novella.
I'm just saying there's a little bit of meat to that story. You know what I'm saying?
What I will say is this. We have, at the moment, plans to finish the already contracted novellas, the already written first drafts, which are The Reef. Oh, well, okay, The Writer, before anybody asks about The Writer, that's, as I said earlier, that's in production. That should be out as an ebook relatively soon, hopefully before Christmas in 2015. And then as an audiobook in the first quarter of next year, I'm hoping. There's also something called The Reef, which is a story co-written with Matt Wallace, and that hopefully in 2016, but I'm making no promises because he has to go over that edit again. There's The Gangster, which is the story of Greed at the Splithead, which is co-written with Nathan Lowell, and that should hopefully also be out in 2016. And then there's The Guild, written with J.C. Hutchins, and that is probably 2017.
Yeah.
Other than that, I have no plans ever to contract a co-written story with anybody ever again, because as Scott mentioned before, with the first time that we worked with another narrator, which was Phil Gigante on Nocturnal, he's simply too close to the GFL. He started writing the GFL characters and universe when he was 6 years old. He's very unintentionally possessive of it, and it makes me want to pull my eyelashes out one at a time when we go through that story co-writing process. So we probably won't do that again.
Probably not. We need to finish that up and do it right, and then get on with writing some other styles of books.
Yes. So let's see. Write in with a question. So Christopher writes in with a handful of questions. First one is it related to the Siglerverse, which of course we've sort of answered by not answering several times now. Second one is keeping the book shrouded in mystery was and still is necessary not to spoil the fun of the big reveals. That had me, and I'm guessing others, looking for clues along the way as I tried to guess where the story was going and what was happening. On the back jacket of the book, the letters CA are very clearly marked on what appears to be the wall of the ship. If it doesn't spoil anything in the follow-up books, can you tell us what the CA means or to what it is related?
No.
Do you want to say anything else about that?
I can't tell you.
Is it related to Alive? Can't tell us?
I can't tell you that. It's related to something, but I can't tell you exactly what it is.
Is it related in the Siglerverse?
No.
Okay.
But it is absolutely related to something, but I can't tell you what it's related to. So you're on your own.
But good looking out. Good eye.
It'll be revealed someday.
And he also asked, how was the book pitched to the publisher? Did you work backwards, talking about the premise and the end point? Or did you pitch it as written? And as the story progresses and she learns about leadership, friendship, love, herself, and is trapped on the ship by a race of people who ... I'm curious to how you approach the publisher with this idea. I think you kind of answered that.
Kind of, but that's also the agent's job. In this particular situation, Bird Level, my agent, worked with Bird to get to finally a polished draft that he took to Del Rey. So not even entirely sure. I think a lot of what happens in the publishing industry is agents build up trust with publishers, and agents are like, this is something you absolutely have to commit to reading X percentage of the book so that you get the gist of it. Or you say they all want to sell books. They want to buy the next big thing. They all want the next Martian, for example. So I'm not sure exactly how Bird pitched it, but Bird pitched it and Mark absolutely loved it. And Del Rey wanted it. They're like, let's work out a deal. We don't want you taking it to anybody else. It's called a preempt. So I think it was Bird's first or second editor he pitched. So that means the agent really knows his clients, the publishers, very well. Say, this is perfect for this girl, and you give it to them, and then they want it, and everybody's happy. So right. Bird's fantastic.
Yeah, he's great. Todd, you had a follow-up question asking if once the last book in the Generations Trilogy was completed, would there be a special boxed set? This is an interesting question we get a lot because we have so much control over the GFL books, but the answer is I have no idea. I would say probably
we need this emoticon.
Yeah. Del Rey, which is a subsidiary of Random House, or division of Random House, owns Alive, owns all of those books, and owns how they are published, first publishing. So they could do that if they wanted. I think, as Scott says, if this blows up and is giant like Divergent, that might be the case. But to be honest, I don't even think Divergent or the Hunger Games have a boxed set. So I don't.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they do.
Do they?
Bunches,
do they?
like multiple different.
I mean, I know
covers
Harry Potter
stuff.
does, but I don't know if the others do.
Yeah, Divergent. It depends on sales. If we get to a certain sales level, and we'll figure that out probably by book 3, then absolutely they'll wind up making a box set of it at some point. But it's completely out of our control.
I will tell you that before anybody, I will preempt this question. We're putting out Earth Core this next coming year, and then Scott is definitely on track at some point to write Mount Fitzroy, the second book. And once those 2 books are out, we will put out a one-time only pre-order slipcase, gilt-edged, maybe, who the hell knows, fancy pants box set version of those 2 books. That'll be the only time it's in hardcover print in English. So maybe look for that.
Yep.
And Steve.
Did we have one?
Steve says, thanks for converting my 10-year-old daughter to a junkie. She loved Alive and we're halfway through the rookie.
Oh, great.
So that's not a question, but thank you for letting us know.
All right, Antonius, very nice, very nice.
Fantastic. Kelly, there is not a live baby goat in this office.
There's no live baby goats here. There's none, zero.
Brooke asks, I know this question's not about the audiobook Alive, which by the way was awesome, but is there any freaking way possible you could have your wonderful partner, A. Kovacs, which you spelled perfectly correctly, schedule your next book tour anywhere near Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or Columbus? So here's the thing. We've been to Pittsburgh. I think maybe like 8 people hung out with us in Pittsburgh. So for us, it has to be fiscally feasible. The publisher has to say it's okay. So if that's us, that's one thing. If it's Del Rey, it's another thing. And there has to be a market there. So is it possible that we'll come to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Columbus? Maybe. I'm not ruling it out. It wasn't a very successful book tour stop for us. There are some stops that have 120 or more people there. So possible, yes. Likely, hard to say. Impossible, absolutely not. We may come there again, especially if we're doing sort of a Midwestern tour. It's almost assuredly going to be a GFL tour if it happens again, because we normally do those on the ground. We drive from place to place. So I will not say no, but I will not promise yes.
One of my long-term goals is I want to buy John Madden's bus. And
never going to happen.
Want to buy John Madden's bus and drive it around and go. Of course, if we do another GFL tour, getting a big football cities would be cool. But for tours take up a ton of time. They take me away from writing, and I'm way behind on stuff. They take up money, and there's not as much money in touring as there used to be when there were more bookstores and book sales were larger than they are now. So we'll see. The next book tour will be up to Del Rey, and they tend to field offers from bookstores, and largely they're like, here's the 8 bookstores that wanted you that we think are the best stops. And if that's Pittsburgh, that's Pittsburgh.
Yeah. And one of the things that's happening a lot now is with fewer and fewer bookstores, the live author events are getting fewer and fewer. So even if there is a bookstore in your town, they may or may not support live author events. So we'll see.
Okay.
John Vizcarra has just the one question.
One question.
At Siglerfest, if you guys don't know what Siglerfest is, if you want to go to scottsigler.com/Siglerfest, learn all about it. Next year on Native American Week / Columbus Day weekend in October in Las Vegas, we'll have the next Siglerfest. It's super fun. Check it out. At Siglerfest, you mentioned that when book 6, GFL book 6, The Groom, comes out, you are also going to have a novella called The Best Man, co-written by J.C. Hutchins. I would like to know what process was involved.
How drunk was I for that, to say that? I don't know. I'm sure I said that, John. I'm not sure that's the truth. I'm not sure.
I just would like to know what process was involved in choosing not John nor Jew Tweedy as the best man, as everyone would expect, but the new rookie defensive tackle, Julian Drews? Julian
Drews. I have no idea what you're talking about. If this is something you made up, good on you. If this is something I promised you, remember, after the second Bud Light, all promises are null and void at all times.
Let's see. Jennifer Hathorn asks, seems that Spingate and O'Malley were the only ones consistently loyal to Matilda throughout the story. Why were the others, like Young, so aggressive about taking leadership from her? He referred to her as a stupid circle girl. Was this just their quote-unquote programming, or is it something about her?
It's something about programming and her, primarily programming. That question will be answered in book 2. You got to try and imagine, take yourself, all of your personal prejudices and your personal biases, and leave those in place to some extent, and then take away all of your rationale and reasoning behind them, so that you just react poorly to certain kinds of people without really having any justification for it, which by and large is most of what racism is in general, is people just reacting because they've been told to react a certain way. There are deeper reasons for it in a light, and that question will be answered. I'm not in like a Lost promo right now. Questions will be answered, except I will actually answer the freaking questions.
2 more comments,
and
then we're done.
We're done.
Don, you may have missed it. You said, sorry if work got in the way. It looks like you were out of the hangout when we talked about Mount Fitzroy, but yes, Mount Fitzroy is coming. probably 2017 or 18, but it's coming.
Somewhere in that ballpark.
And then we'll end with Zoe, who wrote, I'm so far behind on the story, I'm not going to stick around for much of the hang-up for fear of spoilers, but I just wanted to tell you that the story thus far is so amazing. I really love your writing style, and the voice acting in the audiobook is so passionate and lively. Looking forward to reading and listening more of your work.
Great salutation. Zoe's salutation is, stay gold, Zoe. It's like something Archer would say. Stay golden.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that is it, unless you guys want us to bumble around some more with the tech. I think we might be finished.
I think that's an hour and 15 minutes minus 10 minutes, which I stole from you. Sorry about all the screw-ups. We'll absolutely do better this time, but this is our first hangout. What'd I say?
This time.
We'll do better next time.
This time we're already done. It wasn't great.
I kind of felt like, we were bobbing and weaving this time, though.
It wasn't great.
We were ducking some punches coming back. Good on our feet. We didn't get knocked down. We stayed up. Everything's cool. No, wasn't great?
No, wasn't great. Next time we're even going to have a Q&A feature, but I think we handled it.
Yeah, you are all fantastic, and next time we'll absolutely have a Q&A feature. Thank you for tuning in. Sorry about the confusion. We will talk to you all real soon.